Ivy is a volunteer advocate of all things and all people, and she's a board member as well of Louisiana Recycling Coalition.
Thank you. And thank you for our illustrious leader here. I'm so proud of seeing this first inaugural recycling panel. Think about it, it's springtime, so what great pollinators in this room. So you guys and do it appropriately, because my background's in HR, so make sure you do it appropriately as you pollinate. Anyway, so with all of that said, I'm moderating the funding recycling from the ground up. We have 3 members that'll join us if they're available to come on up. I see Alita Kane from the Recycling Partnership. I see Brandon Key from Closed Loop Partners standing up, and Jan Wernhars. You guys are, please join the panel section here. And we want to thank you guys for making this inaugural a success so far. Are you guys enjoying yourself and learning? Woo, yeah. And I meant to say, bonjour, comment ça va, cher? So, pas mal, très bien. So, say again? Advocacy, yes. And oh, by the way, I do a plug for the Bayou Cultural Collaborative. There is a French gathering. We do it quarterly now. So if you're interested, let me know, because we used to do it monthly, and there's a lot of great things I can share with you. So I wear many hats. And with that said, our panelists, I presume we have slides to show, and who's up first?
Well, those are my slides, so I'll take it that I'm up first. Hey everyone again, Alita, the Recycling Partnership. Since I already did a brief intro on the partnership, I'm not going to do that again. But I did want to, if I could have that, thank you so much. I did want to just do some framing on what I had mentioned earlier, which was the opportunity really that's in Louisiana. And when we think about funding, we have to think about why. Why are you going to get funding in Louisiana? Like, why should you get funding in Louisiana, right? Like, what is your need? You want to be able to really make a case. And so I thought some of the data that we have at the Recycling Partnership was really worth talking about as you all are thinking about your needs for funding. So one thing to look at is the way we talk about these two things, which are generation and capture of recyclables. So single family generation is going to be the quantity of recyclables available in single family households. So what's out there that could be recycled, and then there's the capture, and that means what is the quantity, what is actually getting captured from those households to be recycled. What you'll see is there's a pretty significant gap. So looking at Louisiana specifically, and all of the data that you're seeing, I feel like there's a magic spot, and if I find it and stand there, we won't get that little bit of feedback, so I'm gonna try that. But all of the data that I'm going to share is from our State of Recycling report. So we do publish a State of Recycling report about every 2 to 3 years. So all of the data coming out of this one was our 2024 report. So if you want to dig into any of this deeper, you can. So recycling rates in this region are some of the lowest in the country. And to address this, we're trying to understand, what are the regional capabilities? What does access look like? How do people feel about their recycling programs? And how well are they engaging with those programs? So these are some regions that we have identified that have strong opportunity. So it's the Southern Gulf Coast, EPA Region 4 and 6. These regions are without policy, and they often have the largest opportunity to capture tons and improve national rates. So when we look at, Region 9 and some of Region 10 and maybe even, Region 1 up there, we know what those states look like to some extent, and we know that people look towards them to see the high-functioning recycling programs that they have, right? We also know that when you have a capture rate already that's in the high percentage, and when you have participation rates that are in really high percentages, so let's say you have a 60 to 70% participation rate in a community, it's going to be so much harder to increase your participation rate per participation rate, the amount of funding that has to go in to get you from, you know, an 80% participation rate to a 90% participation rate is so much more than it's gonna take to get you from a 30% to a 40%. So when I talk about this opportunity here, it's really that there's so much untapped potential that we know we can actually move people on with the right amount of funding, and it doesn't have to be very excessive because, again, that opportunity is just ripe, you know, it's right there for us. This looks like, if you're thinking back to your middle school science days, it looks a little bit like the scientific elements chart. But this is actually looking at access and participation. So it's looking at your overall participation rate nationwide. It's about 43%. Texas is at 29%, and we're looking at Louisiana at 12%. So again, just really illustrating here, the Gulf Coast states currently experience some of the nation's lowest participation rates. So we have so much room for improvement here. This data, when we're speaking Texas and Louisiana specifically, in addition to doing a massive data research in Louisiana and the Gulf Coast overall, we also looked at Texas and Louisiana and did some ethnography research within these areas to not only understand what we're seeing in the quantitative data, but what is actually being said in the homes and what do perceptions look like. And so 13% recycling rate in Texas and Louisiana, it results in about 3.9 million tons of residential recyclables lost annually. And so we want to know why, like why does that happen, right? And we have quite a bit of ethnography research that frames that, and I would love to dig into that more, but I know we had a brief time here today. So this is like my teaser of if you're really interested in some of that ethnography research, we have a lot of our behavior change workshops that are coming out right now. So I highly recommend coming and attending one of those webinars or workshops and going into our hub. And so when we're thinking about funding again and thinking about resources, if you go into our recycling hub, this is where you can find information on both our funding, our resources, and our grant opportunities. There was supposed to be a little video that played there, but that's okay. It would just take up a whole nother minute of our time. So I do recommend jumping into our RPS hub just to get more of that information. If you scan that QR code there, I know I've heard that a few times today. You guys are probably, your fingers are getting tired, but that QR code will take you to go directly into our RPS hub.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you. And with that said, our next speaker is Jan Winhurst with Keep Louisiana Beautiful, which is part of the Lieutenant Governor's Office CRT, and we want to welcome Jan.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. So just a little overview of the grants that KLB is able to offer to a bunch of different types of organizations. Since 2004, we've been able to award over $8.5 million in grants. When Alita started her presentation and she talked about the grant being $150,000, I had to hang my head because our grants are significantly smaller than that. However, if you look at that cumulative effect of doing it year after year, and each year our budgets do get bigger for the grants. So I'll try to make myself feel a little bit better about that with this slide. KLB started out as a nonprofit, and then most recently we were taken under the DCRT wing, and so now we are part of the state, which has significantly increased our resources with the help of the Lieutenant Governor and the state agencies has been a great boost to us in what we're able to do. But also that means that the grant application process is increasingly competitive. And overall, just real quick overview, a Greener Grounds grant, I'm not going to read all the information, but the Greener Grounds grant is a grant that was created in response to a committees and task force and so forth. So that relates to festivals, large Louisiana events, and waste management of those. Healthy Communities is our broadest and oldest grant that encompasses the most eligibility for organizations and also the widest eligibility for the types of programs that those organizations can apply for. Beautification grant is mainly directed at planting projects and welcome signs to cities. We just got finished attending the Keep America Beautiful conference in New Orleans. And one thing that they talked about is a lot of times people say, oh, well, beautification's nice, but we have more pressing things to do. And there have been many studies that show the correlation between making beautiful spaces and reduction in litter and so forth. So that's what that grant covers. Litter camera grant is also a new grant. It is related to surveillance cameras to help with the enforcement related to illegal dumping and obviously illegal litter. Sheriff's grant, that is a little bit of a bigger grant, and those sheriff's grants allow for the parish to either buy equipment such as vans and trailers in order to enhance or expand their roadside litter pickup, but it also can be used to hire a litter coordinator, which we find is very effective for the parishes in order you have that person that's going to be in an ongoing position coordinating all those efforts. So that's a very effective grant for us too. Trash receptacle grant is what it sounds like. We send you trash receptacles. University affiliate grant. Another thing that we presented at Keep America Beautiful, Kevlar affiliate director is very proud of the university affiliate program. It is the biggest in the country, yeah. And so, again, the way to get to folks is education not only at the lower levels, but at the higher levels, and getting those folks with their youth and energy involved in that position as they go up into be leaders for us. So you may see yourselves up there. I made a little collage of the, particularly the Greener Grounds and the Healthy Communities, because that's going to be the two grants that are most applicable to us today for what we're talking about. Grounds crew is represented up there, and a bunch of different projects between those two grants. So just to give you an idea, I said that the grants are competitive process. So the last round of grants that we were awarded, we had 28 applications, and we were able to award 16 of those. And this is a great timing for you all to be in the room and have me talking about the grants, because our next grant cycle, both for the Greener Grounds and for Healthy Communities, the application is going to open on March 16th. That application is going to stay open for several months until the middle of June. So you have some time to plan your projects and put in that application. I'll give you some details on Greener Grounds because it may be, like I said, very applicable to you here. It's up to a $10,000 grant for large Louisiana events. up to 10,000 for 3,000 plus attendees per day, up to 5,000 for 1,000 plus attendees per day. We, of course, have requirements that go along with the grant, but one of the biggest ones and the most important one, thank you, yeah, and you don't need to get the grant to get these, but this is a resource that Keep Louisiana Beautiful offers. It's the Greener Grounds Workbook, and the Greener Grounds Guidebook. So this is a comprehensive plan for a waste management plan at large Louisiana events, so you don't have to recreate the wheel, because often creating the program from scratch is one of the hurdles to doing it. So the programs have been created for you here, and it is a requirement of the grant, if you get the grant, to use these materials and submit back to us the results and what you've seen and how the program worked for you, et cetera. So the purpose, again, is to provide education and guidance in creating practical applications. So, like I said, this is a great resource for us here. So eligibility, organizers of large Louisiana outdoor events, which includes municipalities and parishes, and also not-for-profit large outdoor events. The other grant that's going to be opened March 16th is Healthy Communities Grant. As I mentioned, it's our broadest grant. Again, the max grant amount is $10,000. The grant purpose here, and we, again, try to keep this very wide because we know that folks in different communities and so forth have different needs, and we try to have this grant be able to address as broad a scope as we can. So it's very broadly for litter and removal and prevention, best practices for waste management, reduction, recycling, reusing, for litter enforcement, for litter waste management education and environmental stewardship, and other related efforts. And just real quick, I did want to bring up the fact that along with the grants, Keep Louisiana Beautiful has a host of other resources for you. And when we start talking about education, as we were talking about it earlier in the day, Act 72, I believe, was the education for K through 5. So when in the past couple of years, KLB has created a K through 5 lesson plan manual with 10 lessons in it. I don't execute this program, but I felt wanted to tell you about it and direct you to the KLB website where you can find more information about this program, how to get it. It's a free program. It's downloadable. I believe that in the past year or two, that manual got physically sent to every public school of K and 5 in the state. So it was sent out, it's there, we have other resources, we have videos, we have activity books, we have a whole host of things. So it's keeplouisianabeautiful.org, and then once you go to that website, there's the contact information for my colleagues who actually run those programs, so I did want to get that in there. So for eligibility of who can apply for the Healthy Communities Grant, some of our grants are very narrow in that. For instance, the surveillance camera grant, only eligible for that grant is law enforcement agencies for obvious reasons. That's the point of the grant, is to bridge the gap that they have often in being able to execute enforcement. This is widely open to all types of organizations, parishes, municipalities, state agencies, government entities, schools, colleges, universities, nonprofits, KLB affiliates. And so I will direct you, well, let me see what my next slide is. Yes, here we go. So to get more information about all of these things, if you go on our website, you can get a more in-depth description of the grant. You can, it will outline for you what the grant requirements are, what the grant timelines are. And then you're able to contact me as you go through the application process with any questions. Also, you'll find on the website the application link, not only the link, but you'll find a sample application. So before you go onto the Cognito platform where you will apply, you can see exactly the information you need. You can call me up and say, I don't understand what this is, or ask questions and so forth about that. And then as far as knowing when these two grants or other grants that we have or new opportunities, I suggest that you, again, go to the website. At the bottom of the homepage, you can sign up for our newsletter where we put out our opportunities and timelines and so forth regularly, monthly. We also do it through press releases, through social media and so forth. So again, the best way to get over that hurdle of the competitiveness is to, the second one, that's in yellow. That's really all you really need to know since you've been in kindergarten. Read the information on the website, on the application, and really it does tell you everything that you need for that. Make sure that you're eligible. A lot of those refusals, I think I said we had 16 out of 28 grants that we were able to award for greener grounds. The majority of the people who were denied were people who actually weren't eligible or didn't fill out the application right. It wasn't so much that there was anything wrong with, well, or maybe the project wasn't eligible, but it wasn't that we saw great projects that we had to deny. It was this issue of reading the information, making sure that you're eligible, that your project is eligible, so that we are able to go ahead and at least consider you for it. Because if it's not, you don't even in the consideration. And that's my contact information. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you very much. Next is Brendan Keefe, Closed Loop Partners.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Brendan Keefe. I'm from Closed Loop Partners. Just a quick, I'm not going to read all this for compliance reasons, going to skip over it. And I'm also not going to spend too much time on this slide because my mom got upset about that picture. Contrary to what that may imply, I do smile, and I would be happy to talk to you after this session about the ways our organizations can collaborate. Just quick background on myself. I'm a senior associate at Closed Loop Partners. We're an impact investment firm based out of New York City. I've been at Closed Loop for about 3.5 years now. Spent most of my career in the financial services space, but I've had a long time interest in the environmental and sustainability world, and was able to join Closed Loop Partners, which is one of the few places where I found I could combine both my real-world experience with my personal passions. For those who aren't familiar with Closed Loop Partners, we were founded back in 2014. Our founder previously worked for Mayor Michael Bloomberg's administration as a deputy director of recycling and sanitation. He founded Closed Loop with the goal of really helping the US economy transition from what we call a linear economy to a circular economy. A linear economy is, I think a lot of people are familiar, but kind of a take, make, waste economy where you're extracting a resource from the ground, making it into a product. That product goes to landfill, is never used again. Circular economy is trying to reuse, recycle that product as many times as it can before it is diverted to some kind of end location or use. We've got about $575 million of assets under management. We're backed and we're supported by some of the largest CPG companies in the world. Coca-Cola, Walmart, Pepsi, Danone, Unilever, Starbucks, you name it. We've probably talked to them or have some kind of relationship with them. They provide us with the money to go out and invest and provide financing to both municipalities, parishes, counties, private companies, nonprofits that are focused on building or upgrading circular economy focused projects. And my team in particular is on the debt financing side. So sort of like a municipal bond program, which we're able to compete with pretty well in terms of interest rates, but maybe not as long in terms of like a loan tenor. We provide what we call catalytic capital, and I'll get more into that in a second. But we're really trying to catalyze the circular economy in the US. Europe and other parts of the world are ahead of the U.S. and there's I think limited amount of landfill space in the U.S. right now. Landfills take a lot of time to build, develop, get permits and approvals for, versus a recycling center that can be up and running in, call it, 2 years. We've financed over 100 different investments, whether that be companies or municipalities across the U.S. We also work in Canada a little bit, but I would say 95% plus in the U.S. To date, we've financed one company in Louisiana and one municipality in Florida, but we have a strong interest in trying to support the southeastern region, which is part of the reason why I'm down here, and I really appreciate the invitation from Jen and her team, as well as the work putting this together. So I think, as many of us know, when you're thinking about starting a project or in the recycling space, you have to think about where you're going to get that money from. Hopefully, there's grants and maybe tax credits available that don't have to be repaid, or maybe come with some stringent rules to follow to not be repaid. There's other things like cash that's either sitting in your municipality's coffers or on your company's balance sheet, but that can also be expensive, and there might be alternative sources or alternative ways to use that money. And then there's strategic capital if you're a business, primarily maybe a municipality that has some kind of offtake agreement with a private company that has a reason to help support one of its suppliers or customers to stay in business. For private companies, really, there's selling a portion of your business. We work with a lot of small business operators who've put a lot of time and effort into growing their businesses, and obviously that's not usually a route they want to go down. And then there's debt as well, which is where closed loop often comes into play because it's non-dilutive capital. It does need to be repaid, so we're not like TRP where they're generally providing grants. We are providing loans, maybe capital leases that have to be repaid over a certain period of time, but we can often provide very favorable terms, especially to municipalities where we have provided 0% rate loans before, and we are able to do that because of the backing and support that we have from those large CPG companies in the US that want to see more recycling infrastructure built across the US to keep their packaging and plastic products in circulation, out of landfill, off the streets of our various cities and towns. Things to consider as well, I just touched on it a little bit, but there are, and I can circulate these slides after, focusing on the private companies. Oftentimes when you're talking to a bank or maybe another similar financial partner, they might ask for things like a personal guarantee. We wouldn't do that. They might have a finite amount of time or a certain threshold that they have to hit from a financial standpoint, but we are an impact investment firm. We do require a little bit of a financial return for the private companies, but we also really want to see impact being generated, and that's a requirement for our financing. We often measure that by tons diverted. There, on the previous slide, you saw that we've we've funded projects that have diverted over 15 billion pounds in the US and Canada through the projects that we have financed before. So really trying to see material diverted from landfill. There are certain types of materials that we know that just there are no other use cases for it right now, and landfills are going to continue to be a part of that ecosystem, but trying to extend the landfill life and create and support the circular economy. Catalytic capital, just to dive a little bit more into that, you can think of it as flexible and risk-tolerant capital. Like I just said, there might be a financial hurdle that a typical bank or investment firm might have to hit. We don't have to kind of abide by that strict criteria, and we can get around that by also requiring like an impact hurdle, diverting X amount of tons per year after the project is up and running. And we're also very experienced in the space. We finance anything from a municipality that wants to build its own MRF to a private company that wants to maybe they're currently producing packaging products. They want to increase the amount of recycled content in their packaging goods. That could be on the fiber space, plastic space, aluminum space, pretty much any kind of material that is plastics 1 through 7, aluminum, fiber, OCC, those types of materials that are generally typical of packaging goods. We also have relationships with a lot of OEMs that are providing the recycling equipment that is used across the US, whether they're in Europe or US based. We can make those connections for you if you'd like to speak further. And we're very just familiar with the aches and pains that the recycling industry has faced right now. For those who follow the PET space, that's obviously been a fairly volatile and depressed market right now, but we're familiar with that. We're willing to work with our borrowers to kind of get through the periods of tough times and grant some support and help when they need to. Just a quick overview of the different types of materials that we have impacted over the years. This isn't necessarily driven by the projects that we have focused on. It's also driven, as many know, by the actual material streams that our projects may receive. OCC and paper make up, call it 40 to 60% of a material stream, and then obviously other smaller materials like aluminum, LDPE are going to be part of a smaller part of the material stream. But they're all in scope for us and of importance to us. We have recently financed an LDPE processing facility up in Minnesota that I'll get to in a second. 2 case studies for those who are familiar with the LDPE space. So that think of your plastic bag, your grocery bag. A MRF does not want to accept that. I'm sure everyone in this room knows it. Unfortunately, most of the US does not know that. But in certain cases, and given how light they are, it can be very tough from an economic standpoint to profitably recycle those. And if the economics aren't going to work out, then unfortunately the project might not work out. But there are certain locations and areas of the country where it can work out. One way we have been flexible was up in Minnesota. A company formerly called MyPlas built a LDPE processing facility. Unfortunately, they hit had a kind of a rough spot and went bankrupt, but we helped facilitate and continue to lend to the buyer who came in and stepped in and is now operating that facility called GDB Circular. And what they're really doing is taking LDPE, plastic bags, washing them, cutting them up, pelletizing them, and trying to resell them into the market, and really trying to keep one of the toughest to recycle materials out of landfill. Another probably more relevant case study would be the city of Kansas City. We partnered with the Recycling Partnership to provide the residents of Kansas City with new 65-gallon recycling carts. So we're able to provide, I mentioned, if a municipality wants to start their own MRF, we have often and also provide financing for municipalities that want to roll out either new curbside recycling programs, or they want to upgrade their programs from, say, an 18-gallon bin to a 95-gallon cart. We've done that before in a few places, and TRP and us have a pretty big announcement coming out this coming Monday for a state capital that we just supported a brand new rollout of recycling carts for. But this is, in Kansas City's example, a fairly large municipality with 380,000 residents. They needed catalytic financing, which we, along with TRP and a few others, stepped in to provide. TRP provided a grant. We came in and provided about $5 million in a catalytic loan with a very low interest rate, 0% interest rate loan to be repaid over 5 or 6 years, which is very enticing. It's even lower than what they could get in the muni bond market. And really, in exchange, they have to repay us over 5 or 6 years, and we want to see the amount of tons diverted from landfill increased. So, just some closing remarks. There are a few different factors that will influence your capital projects and the decisions that you make. Closed Loop does have capital available, and we are very interested in trying to expand our presence in the southeastern part of the U.S. We can work with both municipalities, nonprofits, companies, and everything in between. And happy to talk further about this later on. I've got plenty of business cards too, if you want one.
And for a great presentation. Did they show you the money? So they showed you places where you can find some money and some resources, including our DEQ partners and sponsors who pointed out what's on the books in our state for us to get financial incentive to recycle. So with that said, let's open up for questions.
Hi, my name is Annie Collins. I'm the founder of Glass Act Recycling. We're a 360-degree recycling center, mostly glass, and we also have cardboard, aluminum, and metal. And we are located in Alexandria, Louisiana. And my question, first my comment to Jan. We've worked together for a couple of years, and I've never met you face to face. So I am so happy to meet you. I'm sorry I didn't come up and say hi earlier. But, and I can't say enough about KLB. I mean, your grant process makes it so,
it's it's not only easy, but it's step by step by step, and you just don't miss a step. Even after you've followed it, you give a full calendar of every single thing you do and when you do it. So kudos, I've never seen anything quite that well done. My two questions to you are, can you apply for more than one grant in the year? Because we usually do the community grant for the 10,000. Can you also apply for another grant if it were available?
The answer is yes. However, for the two grants that we talked about here today, the Green Grant and the Healthy Communities, generally because the grant process is competitive, we encourage you to maybe pick the project that you want to do most and apply for that one and put all your effort into making a great application for that. Having said that, for the trash receptacle grant, that's a totally different animal, comes at a different time, different purpose. So it's no problem to apply for Healthy Communities or Greener Grounds, and then also a trash receptacle grant. Also, for other grants, for instance, the surveillance camera grant that I said, that's a totally different deal. So if you're housed in, if an affiliate, for instance, is housed in government, and they've applied for a Green Grounds grant, but then their parish wants to get a sheriff's grant, those are two totally different things, and that consideration isn't made. It's mainly the three grants that we offer at the same time. The beautification, which, by the way, is only open to municipalities and parishes, the Healthy Communities grant, and the Greener Grounds grant. Generally, again, you can submit two applications, but we suggest for those you just submit the one, so you're kind of not competing against yourself.
And thank you for that. And the second question I have is, in the grant world, it's mostly projects and programs. And there's very little funding, if any, for support, overhead, staffing, and we are 100% volunteer. I'm very proud to say that. We have over 240 volunteers. We're just blessed. But we do have overhead, and do any of your grants speak to that?
For the Greener Grounds grant, we have just included an allowance for some of those types of expenses. And so just to get into the details of that, again, I would suggest that you go on the website and read all what it is, but it does allow for some overhead where it didn't before, but we've had folks ask for those kind of things. So there is a kind of a percentage allowance, a certain percentage of the grant. For some things, it's 15% of the grant. For some things, it's 25% of the grant, that you can get that type of reimbursable request.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you. Any more questions? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Here I go. This is my version of speed walking.
I'm Abby Slattery with DEQ. My question's for Brendan. I wasn't sure if you mentioned this, but what municipal project are y'all supporting in Louisiana?
We supported a municipality in Florida called ECUA, Emerald Coast Utilities Authority. It's in the Gulf of Florida. It was a MRF that burned down back in 2018. We helped finance the rebuild of it, and it's been up and running for I think about 5 years now. They repaid their loan at the end of 2025, so we no longer have an active financial relationship, but we still speak to them every now and then. On the company side, it was a company called Integrico Composites, which was taking mixed 3 through 7 plastics that could not be recycled, and they were making plastic composite rail ties that are typically made out of wood. That was that happened, I think, initially financed back in 2017. Company did okay, and then unfortunately went during COVID. They had to shut down, so they're no longer actively running. But yeah, that's the other one down here.
But none in Louisiana, or was there one? Just
No.
not a municipal one?
No municipalities in Louisiana today, but
Okay.
we'd love to partner in some way.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, great questions. Anyone else? Okay, here we go. We have one.
It's called Integrico. There's a company. Yep.
This is kind of for Closed Loop and the recycling partnership, since it seems you both work together to fund bins for municipalities. Is there any cases where you have funded more than one bin for a multi-stream system anywhere?
There's no cases where partnership dollars have funded more than one bin for multi-stream. So when you say multi-stream, it can also mean a lot of things. Like, are you focusing specifically on recycling material, or are you thinking multi-stream as in recycling, compost?
So, based on my experience being born and raised here in Louisiana, and working with some cities and parishes, it seems that, for example, Jefferson Parish just 2 years ago canceled its curbside program, which was a commingled program because of contamination, because of the lack of infrastructure to sort those materials. And then we're seeing something similar happening right now in Orleans Parish, where the mayor is actually talking about potentially canceling that program. And just my experience with other recyclers around the country, the trends are that those commingled programs are too much contamination, too much overhead, too much cost, and are kind of being shut down. So just as we redesign our model of a single source multi-stream where the consumer at their home is sorting by organics, by glass, by metals, by plastic, is there opportunity for groups like you to fund these innovative approaches that work in other places around the world and around the country to bring here to Louisiana?
Yeah, so I'll go back to the fact that the Recycling Partnerships funds carded recycling for commingled recycling. And there's a reason that we do that. And it's because time and time again, we see that when you provide folks with ease and access of recycling, you improve recycling rates. The contamination issues that have occurred over the past decade or so have been a mix of reasons, one of them being poor education across the board. And so another thing that we know needs to happen when we provide carded recycling is good, robust education. And we have also seen time and time again that when we do bring carded recycling, commingle carded recycling with good education, we get good results. And so that is why that is the program that we continue to fund. From our perspective, there is no data that supports going back to recycling that is not commingled will reduce contamination. So unless we saw some strong actual data that supported that and could make a case for it, there would just be no reason for us to do that.
Thank you.
I welcome it though if you have it.
I have some data I'd love to share with you.
I was just saying I have some data I'd love to share with you from operating and running for the last 2 years a single source multi-stream curbside collection. So I'll circle back with you. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Isn't this great pollination again happening?
I'll ask a couple of questions. One is a follow-up. During the first panel, this young lady over here asked about the different size carts, and it didn't really get answered as far as if you sign up and you get a recycling cart, you'll pay less and have a smaller garbage cart, I think was her question. and asking if we had done it in Lafayette. And we had actually looked into it a little bit, but the administration of that is extremely difficult. The changing of the garbage bill, and like if somebody moves, that the garbage bill has to be changed if they don't do the small cart, et cetera. I don't know, but I did want to know if you had any examples of a community that you knew of somewhere that did something like that was a success. It just seemed like it was an administrative nightmare. And the other question is, when Lafayette, we used to have where, it's the garbage and recycling is together, and everybody in the city of Lafayette, that's over 40,000 households, all got a recycling cart. And then when we redid our contract, we wrote the spec that, of course, everybody still is part of their contract, but not everybody got a recycling cart. They had a request. And so we're now at about half the households have a recycling cart. We were trying to your point, is there commingling contamination? If a cart appears at your house and you're like, great, now I have 2 garbage carts, versus seeking out the recycling cart. Is that better for, not having the contamination if somebody has to ask to get that cart delivered? It was just, I don't know if y'all had any thoughts on that, or if anybody else did on both of those 2 things.
I heard a few things in there, so I want to just make sure I understand the questions. I think the last question that I heard was, are there differences in contamination rates between opt-in programs or universal carted recycling programs? Yeah, we don't have any data that shows that there's differences in contamination rates between those 2 programs, opt-in versus a carted recycling program that's universal. One thing to think about as you're thinking about those 2 different programs is optimizing collection. And so another thing about opt-in programs is how are your contracts currently set up for collection, and how much are you paying for collection, and does it make sense for you to have an opt-in program? And so I think when we think about how we set up our programs, we have to be looking at it holistically on what makes sense for the community versus just looking at one data point. And then I think I heard another question in there, but I'm not positive on what that first question was.
I think it might have been about this one size card for MSW than a different size. I think personally, I think TRP might agree that we generally try to advocate for equal size carts, at least. In our experience, if you get, say, a 65-gallon MSW cart and then a 95-gallon recycling cart, while the bigger recycling...
Can I clarify? The question is about the trash bin and different sizes for the trash bin. The recycling bin stays the same. Ideally, the recycling bin ends up being larger than the trash bin. So like a 24-gallon curbside trash can is going to be whatever per month, and then a 96-gallon trash bin is going to be like triple that. The idea is that the customer is seeing the bill of their trash. They are paying for their trash, so they make an automatic connection between all this crap that I'm throwing away, that I'm bringing home, I have to pay for on the back end. Whereas if I'm a tiny little person that recycles everything and does my little compost and does my little gardening, and I have like one reusable supermarket trash bag a week, why should I be paying for the same price for the guy who has a 96-gallon bin that's picked up twice a week? That's the financial incentive, the question that I had earlier that was not answered.
Yeah, happy to jump in. Just to clarify, was that your question specifically?
Yes, because her question didn't get answered.
Okay, so for the pay-as-you-throw model?
Yes.
Yeah, does pay-as-you-throw work? Yes. Like we've seen at the partnership where pay-as-you-throw can work for a model for trash. And
Has anyone in Louisiana done it successfully?
that's, no. I mean,
Okay.
my second point was going to be, and pay-as-you-throw requires that your municipality, it has the desire to do it, that your local politics have the desire to do it. What you will find is that it means that you're going to have to change your municipal fee structure, and sometimes that takes a lot of political will. And so there are a lot of pieces that need to come together for a pay-as-you-throw model to work and to work well. I have seen examples of it in Texas, so it can be done somewhere like Louisiana. I can tell you as well something that was really interesting, actually out of a study that we did with Burns and McDonnell in Texas, was pay-as-you-throw cart size variability. We looked at that versus recycling contamination because the city was thinking that there was a strong chance that because they had pay-as-you-throw for their garbage carts, that their recycling contamination was higher for households that had a smaller garbage cart because they were incentivized to put more trash into their recycling cart. And so we did a study, we did a massive contamination reduction program with them. As part of that, we did a study to see was there truth behind the fact that the households with smaller garbage carts had more contamination in their recycling, and we did not see that that was the case.
Excellent question, and thanks for.
Andrew Elsie with Lemon Tree Recycling, based here in St. Tammany. My question is for the KBL grants. Not every grant was awarded out, so you had 20 and 45. Does the money that otherwise would have been spent if the applications were approved, does that get rolled over into like another fund for the next year to, essentially would it grow if not everybody's getting awarded it? And then the second part is, where is the money coming from now that you guys are a state agency? Is that a congressional funding, or is that something that Congress approves?
I apologize, but I'm not hearing you or understanding you. Can you?
Sorry, I'll try to speak a little clearer. I think I was mumbling. For the grant funding, the grants applications that do not get approved, does the money that otherwise would go to the applications, does it roll over, or where does that money, you know what I mean? You had 20 of 45, so that means 25 potential fundings didn't happen, but that money, I'm sure, is still there.
So, so the numbers might have been confusing, sorry about that.
Okay.
So the 45 was the number of applications.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
So it's of 45 applications, we were able to fulfill 20.
Oh, I understand.
There is generally a budget number set, and if we get more eligible and strong applications, then that budget allows, we try to go back and get more budget so that we can fund as many good, strong applications as we have. Sometimes that doesn't work, and good applications, they're scored. There's a panel of people who score the applications, and so they are ranked, and so we will do the best we can. But what we also do is we encourage folks to, if they didn't get the grant, they can call me up and talk to me about maybe how they can make their application stronger, what the scoring levels are, what we score on, and so forth. So, and we really try to accommodate everybody as much as we can. But there aren't necessarily pools of money left over. We'll move it around or spend it or in that bigger grants category.
Gotcha. And maybe you did answer it, but I didn't hear. Where does it originally come from? Is it taxpayer dollars?
It comes from the state.
Okay, yeah. And then what would need to happen to raise the amount that you guys get? It would just have to go, a bill would have to get passed to say we want to appropriate more money to y'all?
Again, I'm sorry, repeat it again for me, please. I apologize.
That's all right. What would have to happen for your funding budget to get raised? Would there just have to be a new bill proposed and then it would just increase?
So there was a bill that was proposed and defeated that was going to take a small percentage of the driver's license fee and give that to keep Louisiana beautiful. Also, I believe part of that was that there is a percentage that's taken now, but no percentage relates to commercial drivers. It's not for commercial licenses. So I think that was part of the effort to get that legislation changed, but evidently that's difficult to do. But we're continuing to try that, to get those. So yes, the increase in funding we did try to get was related to driver's license fees. And again, now that we are part of the state, whereas we weren't before, there's more funding there, I believe, to be had. I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but it's a better spot for us to be in, to be able to kind of guarantee that funding is going to be there every year, and in hopes that we can work on different ways to increase the amounts of those funds year over year.
And last follow-up, are you guys talking with Closed Loop to see if there's a good opportunity to get funding from them or have investments with them?
And who was the organization you
With
said?
the man next to you.
I'm sorry.
I don't
Okay.
believe we've talked, but
We can.
sure, now we can.
Hey, there you go. All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys, and here's another collaboration in the making.